Hey everyone. I recently watched the YouTube docu-series Bridging the Rift in preparation for a video on Netflix's Arcane, and was struck with fascination over the nature of the project and how this nature would both impact the project for better and for worse. Now, if you aren't already familiar with Arcane, it's one of Netflix's top performers, earning the first Primetime Emmy Award for Outstanding Animated Program for a streaming series, and it's considered by many to be the best video game adaptation to date. It's a beast. If you occupy any place on the internet, the chances that you haven't encountered the series already in some way, shape, or form are slim, which is why I'm just not interested in approaching this in a traditional review format. That's been done to death by writers far more eloquent than I. No, what concerns me is how a material so delicate could be fortified into something so great, something truly greater than the sum of its parts, and how ultimately that may have led to its downfall. I speak in hyperbole to keep you interested, but bear with me, it's not all bad. Arcane can be enjoyed from start to finish, and unfortunately for clickbait trailers, it would just be too easy and frankly ignorant to brandish season 2 as bad. It's a complicated conversation, and it all starts with what works, so let's begin there. Arcane was created by Riot Games' own Christian Link and Alex Yee, but the idea appeared to be primarily the brainchild of the former, Link, who approached the project with dreams of grandeur and just the biggest chip on his shoulder. The guy cared a lot about League of Legends already, and he wanted to explore the world of Runeterra outside of its traditional top-down jungle. He envisioned an epic story centered around his favorite champions struggling with their morals and relationships with one another, asking questions like, can a monster be forgiven? And how far would one go for someone they love or someone they hate? Not with the intention of providing direct, profound answers to those questions, but to prod audiences. He genuinely just cared. The project sparked joy for him, so he took the risk on it without corporate incentive. He spent years fleshing out the concept with a small team at Riot to prove the project's merit to CEOs, while simultaneously building a relationship with the French animation studio Fortiche. When all this started, Fortiche was a studio of maybe like 5 dudes. And Riot would commission them for small projects, like popular music videos such as Get Jinxed or Pop Stars. This would be the beginning of the union that would ultimately birth Arcane. I think this is a huge reason why Arcane is as good as it is. You had a fledgling showrunner paired up with an up-and-coming animation studio who both understood the value of taking risks, and also the cost. Both Link and the team at Fortiche knew that the climb to adapt a video game was gonna be a steep uphill one, and this pressure essentially became resources for them on their metaphorical backpacking journey. All of the pressure the team felt while making the series kept them accountable not only to themselves, but also to video game culture as a whole. Link and Yi knew their champions from their time working on League, and that fundamental understanding of their source material positioned them to make a sincere and successful adaptation. Once they were finally cleared for multiple seasons, which was in itself an uphill battle, these two energies put together created an environment that fostered passionate imagination, unbridled creativity, open collaboration, and genuine humanity. Link has said multiple times that the story they set out to tell was only ever 2 seasons. And I can't find anything that says otherwise. On paper, this appeared to be a completely artful endeavor with no executive meddling involved. So aside from the stigma of adapting a video game, they had everything that they needed to fly. And they fucking soared. Link and Yi admit that early on in the process, they realized how in over their heads they were, given that neither of them had any experience showrunning. After struggling to get the show on its feet, they acquired the assistance of 3 women. Monica Macer, Amanda Overton, and Melinda Dilger for showrunning, writing, and producing, respectively, who would ultimately save the series. It's worth noting that because this trust in the creative process is one of Arcane's strengths. Link and Yi handed the reins off to more experienced people, which allowed the project to bend and conform to the needs of greatness. A lot of the ideas in the show come not only from the writing team, but also Fortiche, who they leaned on heavily throughout the creative process. For instance, that dope fight scene on the bridge between Echo and Jinx in season 1, It was actually the animators' ideas to split that between the past and the present, including their child selves. Link gave birth to the idea for the show, but he co-parented it with so many amazing artists, allowing them space to explore and naturally discover meaning within their areas of work so that the show could actually flourish. Throughout all of this, I do not want to give Riot Games any credit, because let's be real, Riot fucking sucks. I'm not gonna pat a CEO on the back for greenlighting someone else's idea. No matter what this Riot Games made documentary tries to tell you about their quality assurance, it was not their intervention that made Arcane great. It was every artist, every musician, every animator, every writer whose blood, sweat, and tears made the difference. At every turn, they are meeting impossibly tall tasks with storytelling at the cornerstone of their approach. That's why the first season of Arcane feels so palpably human. It is. The team injected their humanity into their tasks in order to reach the emotional levels that make Arcane so compelling. You see it with how Link's entire personality is invested in the project, but also in animators who get to work with their children to collect movement references, or voice actors who are pulling from real-life experiences to share vulnerability in a scene. Every decision is treated as important, therefore every individual is treated as important. I truly believe everyone working on this project cared about what they were making, and they cared about making something meaningful. I mean, if you can manage that, adapting a video game is a no-brainer. Because first and foremost, you've made something that's good enough to stand on its own feet without its source material. The best thing we can do to honor something is to give it our best effort in good faith. I definitely just realized like halfway through this video how this microphone works. The first season of Arcane is so good, it stands on its own without League of Legends and without a second season. Everyone has satisfying character arcs, even if it's not a happy ending. It's perfectly paced with incredibly thoughtful and compelling dialogue, balanced with one-of-a-kind animation and action that makes for a truly affecting experience. The fact that it's a video game adaptation is honestly just icing on the cake. It's got buff, complicated women, nurturing, conflicted men, the Joker for girls, religious trans allegory. Fuck, we even have tech corpo Ray William Johnson. Like, it literally has everything. The writing perfectly struck a balance between form and function, doing the equivalent of backflips and handstands on a tightrope with fluid storytelling. Every character and every event is consequential, and moments of shock carry real impact because every thread is woven intentionally around one another. The story naturally arrives at peaks and valleys. The characters are, for the most part, multifaceted and interesting, subverting traditional TV tropes in ways that serve their individual needs. Sincere representation like this matters. For all these reasons and more, it is no surprise that Arcane connected with such a large audience. The team had seemingly broken the curse of video game adaptations, with this version of the IP nearly superseding its predecessor in popularity, because they just kind of cared about what they were making and didn't have executives stepping all over their toes. It was a big deal. The internet cared a lot in return. It's almost as if caring is a renewable resource. With such an impressive debut, it's no surprise that audiences were eagerly awaiting Season 2. Somehow, amidst all the pressure pre-existing, the creative team was now working under even more because of the fans' high expectations. This likely made the chip on their shoulder grow even heavier, and after receiving such critical acclaim in 2021, I can only imagine how disappointing the audience's reactions were for the second season. Season 2 unfortunately suffers from standing in the shadow of Season 1. While not entirely bad, the season we got lacked the focus, clarity, and poise that the studio had become known for. Season 1 is so good and so concise and so potent that it made the haphazard storytelling necessary to keep things moving in Season 2 that much more staggering. Staggering? They only had so much time, and they had so much land to cover. It quickly became a race to the finish line instead of the perfectly measured tempo we were all used to. Gone are the subtleties and nuances we've grown accustomed to from season 1. And in its wake, we're left a pretty enjoyable experience that's more akin to a dark ride on tracks than it is to its older sister season. The narrative beats necessary for resolution feel forced and unnatural, so said resolution doesn't have much impact. Interesting ideas are still present, but they're no longer given the space they need to breathe and marinate into their gloriousness. Subtextual storytelling is substituted for direct dialogue, all in the name of brevity, which has the unfortunate effect of sucking the meaning dry. Events occur with little to no justification, and threads don't feel pulled taut against each other like they used to. It's not that season 2 is bad, it's just a lot sloppier than season 1. It doesn't pack the same punches, it's not as interesting, and it just doesn't have the time to be so. There are just so many ideas in season 2 that don't receive the attention they need to evolve to what they should have. Now, it would be easy to assume that they ran out of time, and to some extent, they did. But for most animated series, that time constraint is due to external issues like network meddling. But Arcane was never canceled by Netflix or Riot Games. So what's up with it? Well, Link started this with the intention to only ever make 2 seasons. He had this big dream, but he didn't have enough experience to direct it, something he's admitted to. He's also been quoted before saying that he's seen a lot of TV shows go on without end, and that he explicitly did not want Arcane to be like that. And in another interview, he mentions that to a certain degree, Victor and Jace's ending wasn't really resolved because they're not given that time. Which is weird, because he's the one that set the time. He's the one who created it as 2 seasons. Now, I can't find anything that confirms this, but I can't help wondering if it was his inexperience that led to the ultimate drop in quality in season 2. The dude felt an insane amount of pressure to please League fans, to please Riot CEOs, to please new fans, simultaneously satisfying his and his team's own artistic interests. Given how much of his original story had to be reworked once the team of experienced writers came on, it would stand to reason that the initial project was probably too big for the 18-episode britches he had pitched to Riot. Link couldn't retroactively ask for more episodes because the creative process for season 1 alone started 6 years before it was released. In the same way, a lot of beautiful organic discovery occurred in the process of creating season 1 that make it greater than the sum of its parts. A lot of messy, unfortunate pitfalls were probably also unearthed that tripped the team up. That is the nature of the creative process when you let it bloom naturally. I think what the team managed to do in season 2 is still fantastic. I just don't feel like I can say that without an asterisk. There are awesome moments, and some of season 2 might even be cooler than season 1 in design. So again, it isn't as simple as simply wishing season 2 bad, have a nice day. Arcane, a story about the complicated relationship we hold with one another and the world around us, deserves a complicated conversation about what it means to care about the people in the world around us. I've watched Act 2 and Act 3 a few times now in preparation of this video, and each time I catch things that make me think, oh, they do know what they're doing. They just don't have enough time to do it right. Which makes me believe that they brought the same level of intentionality and care into the process of making season 2 that they did season 1. The greater story they wanted to tell was genuinely good, but with the short timeline they had set at the beginning, it didn't have the opportunity to completely grow into itself. It was a very human mistake to make. Something that still feels in line with the air of the show. Projects like this don't come around every day, and those quirks are part of what make it so interesting and inspiring. When artists are left in a big enough sandbox with a budget to scale, chances are they'll deliver. Not to beat a dead horse, but corporate incentives, executive meddling, it's stinky. Surprise, surprise. That machine churns out soulless, meaningless products that are forgotten with days past. I hope we see more projects like this follow suit, more funding for big, awesome projects like Arcane. But I know that money and marketability, that will always be the priority for investors. Link and his team's passion stands out to me because it's so uncommon to see projects like this receive funding to this degree. It shouldn't stand out, but it does. That's how far up the capitalist ass we are. If there's one thing to take away from this, it's the kinetic energy of giving a shit. Arcane wouldn't even be half as great as it is if the team working on it hadn't cared as intensely as they did. I think this is the edge, the difference that made Arcane the best video game adaptation that we have right now. I mentioned before how caring is kind of a renewable resource. It doesn't end in itself. Instead, it acts like an energy transforming and transferring from one person to another. The more you care about something in good faith, the healthier that thing will be. And the more that will affect those around it, which only furthers that positivity out into the universe. And in a time when things look incredibly grim, looking towards emblems of our indomitable human spirit is the first step towards realizing that kinetic energy in our own lives. So please, care. I'm Dolty. Thanks for watching.